Okay, so Debbie, I've enabled the screen share. So if you want to start the opening, we'll be fine. Opening prayers.
All Mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All Mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. Them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All Mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all Mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all Mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all Mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. So let's sit for a few minutes. Assume your best meditation posture. In your own way, relax, release, and bring your mind home. Rest in stable, focused, spacious, present awareness. And turn your mind within and rest in the nature of mind without any contrivance or manipulation.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Thank you, everyone. So before we get started, does anybody have any questions or comments to talk about? It's been a couple of weeks since we've been together, so anything has come up that you want to discuss? Okay. All right, then we're going to be talking about the daily main practice. But in order to do that, we need to do our opening prayers, which we just did. And then we should prepare ourselves with mindfulness of the root verses of the 6 intermediate states and the natural liberation of habitual tendencies, the 10-branch prayer, and the purification. So this should be part of your daily practice. If you're going to do daily practice, you should plan on that. So what we're trying to do is to develop, a mindfulness of one-pointed mindfulness. And so this helps us to do that, to bring our mind together and not be thinking about all the extraneous things that go on in our lives every day and so on. So, you should budget whatever time you can, a half hour, an hour, 2 hours, whatever you can, when you have a practice period. There should be a healthy bit of time to allow yourself to really cultivate the benefit that will come when you do that. So let's begin, please, by if John, would you mind reciting for us, and everybody can follow and can recite along with him with your microphones turned off. But John, will you recite page 1, the root verses of the intermediate states, and do the entire prayer. So that will go through page 6. Then after that, immediately after that, then Michael, will you recite the 10 branch prayer that begins on page 8? Well, we would start on page 7, just with the title, page 7, and go through the entire part of that. And then Sandra, if you would please, would you recite the purification on page 14, 15, and 16? So, and then we need to recite we should recite the 100 syllable mantra. We should recite that 3 times, please. And we should also recite the first mantra, the Om Ahom Bodhicitta Sukha Janadatu Ah. We should recite that 3 times as well, and include the English in there. Maybe the first thing that you read would be the English, and then the Sanskrit after that, and then the body of the work. Is that all okay with everybody? All right. So
Lance, if 3 repetitions, do you want 2 English and then 1 Tibetan, or what?
well, it should be 3 repetitions of the Sanskrit.
After 1 English.
Well, the only time that there's an English part there to be considered is in the purification part. Okay.
Okay.
All right, everybody understand? Okay. All right, then please, John, when you're ready, please begin.
Root verses of the 6 intermediate states. According to this cycle of teachings, the circle of birth and death can be seen as being composed of 6 intermediate states. These 6 modalities of existence are waking, living state, dreaming, meditation, the time of death, and the 2 successive states of the after death state are defined in the glossary. This poem emphasizes the centrally important perspective that relates to each of these states. It's recommended that practitioners should memorize these verses and recite them repeatedly while reflecting on their meaning throughout their lives. I bow down to the conquerors, the peaceful and wrathful deities. Alas, now as the intermediate state of living arises before me, renouncing laziness, for which there is no time in this life, I must enter the undistracted path of study, reflection, and meditation, taking perceptual experience and the nature of mind as the path. I must cultivate actualization of the 3 Buddha bodies. Now, having obtained a precious human body this one time, I do not have the luxury of remaining on a distracted path. Alas, now as the intermediate state of dreams arises before me, renouncing the corpse-like insensitive sleep of delusion, I must enter, free from distracting memories, the state of the abiding nature of reality, cultivating the experience of inner radiance through the recognition, emanation, and transformation of dreams. I must not sleep like a beast, but cherish the experiential cultivation which mingles sleep with actual realization. Alas, now, as the intermediate state of meditative concentration arises before me, renouncing the mass of distractions and confusions, I must undistractedly enter a state which is devoid of subjective apprehension and free from the 2 extremes, and attain stability in the stages of generation and perfection. At this moment, having renounced activity, having attained a singular concentration, I must not fall under the sway of bewildering mental afflictions. Alas, now as the intermediate state of the time of death arises before me, renouncing all attachments, yearning, and subjective apprehension in every respect, I must undistractedly enter the path on which the oral teachings are clearly understood, and eject my own awareness into the uncreated expanse of space. Immediately upon separation from this compounded body of flesh and blood, I must know this body to be like a transient illusion. Alas, now as the intermediate state of reality arises before me, renouncing the merest sense of awe, terror, or fear, I must recognize all that arises to be awareness manifesting naturally of itself. No such sounds, lights, and rays to be visionary phenomena of the intermediate state. At this moment, having reached this critical point, I must not fear the assembly of peaceful and wrathful deities which manifest naturally. Alas, now as the intermediate state of rebirth arises before me, I must with one pointed attention concentrate my mind and resolutely connect with the residual potency of my virtuous past actions. I must obstruct the womb entrance and call to mind the methods of reversal. This is the time when perseverance and purity of perception are imperative. I must give up all jealousy and meditate on my spiritual teacher with consort. From the mouth of the accomplished masters come these words: O you, with your mind far away, thinking death will not come, entranced by the pointless activities of this life, if you were to return empty-handed now, would not your life's purpose have been utterly confused? Recognize what it is that you truly need. It is a sacred teaching for liberation. So should you not practice this divine sacred teaching beginning from this very moment? And it is also said, if I choose not to take the oral teachings of the spiritual teacher to heart, am I not the deceiver of myself?
Natural liberation of habitual tendencies, the 10-branched prayer for the accumulation of merit. Visualize in the space before you the 3 precious jewels and the deities of the 100 enlightened families, and then recite as follows. Om, Ah, Hom. I respectfully take refuge inseparably from now until enlightenment in the infinitude of peaceful and wrathful deities, the conquerors gone to bliss, the 3 precious jewels, the meditational deities, the ocean of Dakinis, and the assembly of oath-bound protectors within the infinite Buddha fields reaching to the limits of space. I request the infinite peaceful and wrathful deities of the 10 directions and 4 times, compassionate emanations embodying discriminative awareness and skillful means, pervading the vast infinite space of reality's expanse, to come to this place for the sake of all living beings. I request that the meditational deities be seated here on sun, moon, and lotus cushions, symbolizing skillful means, discriminative awareness, and their stainless union. Upon their bejeweled thrones, fashioned in the form of lions and so forth, in an attitude of unblemished supreme delight. Within this mandala of pristine cognition, which is the natural purity of phenomenal existence, I bow down to the assembly of the peaceful and wrathful conquerors, to the father and mother deities and all their offspring, whose essence is the pristine cognition of Samantabhadra, displayed as uncorrupted bliss in the secret womb of Samantabhadri. I request the peaceful and wrathful conquerors, the oceans of those gone to bliss, to partake of these inestimable outer, inner, and secret offerings, both those actually arrayed and those mentally emanated, which are offered for the benefit of all beings. I acknowledge and remorsefully confess all my negative obscurations and all my habitual tendencies of body, speech, and mind, beginninglessly influenced by the three poisons, which are the accumulating causes for rebirth among the lower states of suffering in cyclic existence. I rejoice with great delight in the Buddha fields of supreme bliss, where all phenomenal existence is recognized as the pervasion of reality's expanse. I rejoice in all compassionate acts, in their merits and in their altruistic intention, and in all deeds that are the source of merit and pristine cognition. I exhort the teachers throughout the fields of 10 directions, who are as numerous as atoms, to stir from their meditative commitments for the sake of all sentient beings, and to turn the wheel of the sacred teachings, thus entirely pervading the reaches of space. I beseech you, O teachers, infinite Buddhas without exception, to remain present and not to pass into parinirvana, and to continue to enact deeds of extensive benefit for the sake of beings, until the world systems of cyclic existence have been emptied. By the power of whatever past and present and future virtues I accumulate, may all sentient beings throughout the furthest reaches of space mature into worthy recipients of the unsurpassed greater vehicle, and then swiftly attain the status of the infinite, peaceful, and wrathful deities. As the 10-branched prayer is concluded, the Lama visualizes that all the objects of refuge melt into light and then gradually dissolve into the crowns of each of the attending persons, including the dying person himself.
Natural liberation of habitual tendencies, purification. It is in the unified intention of the body, speech, and mind of the 42 peaceful and 58 wrathful deities of the great Buddha field that displays the wisdom that cuts through all ignorance, to manifest their wisdom for the benefit of the enlightenment of all sentient beings. Om Ahom Bodhicitta Mahasukha Janadatua Om Rulu Rulu Hom Jo Hom. Om Ahom Bodhicitta Mahasukha Janadatua Om Rulu Rulu Jom Om Rulu Rulu Hom Jo Hom. Om Ahom Bodhicitta Mahasukha Janadatua Om Rulu Rulu Hom Jo Hom. From the field of reality's expanse, uncreated and pure, within a celestial palace, which is a seminal point of light, pure, unceasing, and radiant, through the natural expressive power of one's own mind, uncontrived and empty. Intrinsic awareness, radiant and empty, arises in the form of Vajrasattva, seated upon a bejeweled throne adorned with a lotus, sun, and moon cushions. The right hand holds a Vajra at the heart, symbolizing the union of awareness of absolute wisdom and emptiness. The left hand supports a bell resting on the hip, symbolizing the union of wisdom appearances and emptiness. And the head is adorned with a garland of perfect Buddhas, representing the 5 enlightened families of those gone to bliss. Thus, Vajrasattva manifests in the form of the Buddha body of perfect resource, exquisitely adorned with silks and jewels, seated in the posture of royal ease, with the right leg extended and the left drawn in. Radiating at the heart is the seed syllable Hum, surrounded by the 100-syllable mantra. Om Benzo Sato Samaya Manu Palaya Benzo Sato Tenopa Tishto Drido Mebawa Suto Kayo Mebawa Supokayo Mebawa Anurakto Mebawa Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sarva Karma Sutsam Me Siddham Shriyam Kuruham Aha Ha Ha Ho Bhagawan Sarva Tata Gata Benzer Mame Munsa Benzer Bawa Maha Samaya Sato Om Benzo Sato Samaya Manu Palaya Benzo Sato Tenopa Tishto Drido Mebawa Suto Kayo Mebawa Supo Kayo Mebawa Anurakto me bhava, sarva siddhi me prayata, sarva karma sutsam me, siddham shriyam kuruham, aha ha ha ho bhagavan, sarva tata gata, benzra mame munsa, benzra bhava maha, samaya sato Om Benza Sato Samaya Manu Palaya Benza Sato Tenopa Tishto Trito Mebawa Sutokayo Mebawa Supokayo Mebawa Anurakto Mebawa Sarva Siddhi Me Prayata Sarva Karma Sutsame Siddham Shriyam Kuruham Aha ha ha ho Bhagavan Sarva Tata Gata Benza Mame Munsa Benza Baha Maha Samaya Sato.
Thank you. So now the natural liberation of the habitual tendencies, the main practice. Having thus purified the two obscurations, and then we can see it's the fundamental ignorance of dualistic nature, our wisdom mind, and the dissonant mental states, or the kleshas. The kleshas are the defilements of the five poisons, and the 84,000 emotions are the kleshas. So having thus purified the two obscurations, one should visualize the assembled peaceful and wrathful deities of the 100 sacred enlightened families as a mandala of deities within one's body and pray. It is this context that the aspirational prayers of the intermediate states are recited. The combined practice is as follows. Then, maintaining the recognition of oneself as Vajrasattva in the celestial palace of one's own precious heart, one clearly discerns a seminal point formed of the five lights, whose nature is the five pure essences of the five elements. And from this, the 36 peaceful Buddhas radiantly manifest, amidst a radiant and vibrant mandala suffused with the five pristine cognitions. Their bodies composed of five lights, the unimpeded union of emptiness and radiance, seated upon a tier of lotus, sun, and moon cushions, supported by lion, elephant, horse, peacock, and Sivam Savika thrones. So we go back and just discuss just for a moment. So we're visualizing ourselves as Vajrasattva. So we see that on the left side of this page is Vajrasattva with the Shitro Vajrasattva, where at the heart center are the 36 peaceful deities, or the 42 peaceful deities. And at the throat are the Vidyadhara, the hero awareness holders. And at the crown, at the head, are the 58 wrathful deities. So we visualize ourselves as Vajrasattva in the celestial palace of one's precious heart. So within our heart center, one clearly discerns a seminal point of the five lights. So the five lights are the five Buddha lights: the yellow, the green, the blue, the red, and the white. So if you take white light and you put it through a prism, these are the lights that you will see. These are the prism lights that you will see. So these are representative of the five Buddha families. And so the seminal point of light would be like that prism, that point where the white light is coming through and then is suffusing out to show us the five lights of the five Buddha families, whose nature is the five pure essences of the five elements. So the five elements are the water, the earth, the fire, the wind or the air, and space are the five elements. And from this, the 36 peaceful Buddhas radiantly manifest. So we've discussed them. They are, we're going to come in remembrance of them here in the next couple pages. So amidst a radiant and vibrant mandala suffused with the five pristine cognitions, The 5 pristine cognitions would be the wisdoms, the 5 wisdoms of the 5 Buddha families. So the mirror-like wisdom, the wisdom of equanimity, the wisdom of discriminating awareness, the all-accomplishing wisdom, and the all-pervading wisdom. So again, these are all in the text. So the mandala, we look at the picture on page 17 on the right side, would be a picture showing the deities of that, and then you would imagine that is in a mandala. There are bodies composed of 5 lights, the unimpeded union of emptiness and radiance, seated upon a tier of lotus, sun, and moon cushions, supported by lion, elephant, horse, peacock, and Sivam Savika thrones. So we can see the images of those thrones, of those animals that are supporting that on the right side of the page here. And the moon cushion, so these first deities that we are encountering are the peaceful deities. So the peaceful deities are seated on a lotus pedestal, and then on the lotus pedestal is a moon disk, a moon seat that they are sitting on. The moon represents the compassion, the cooling of the wisdom fire, which would be a orange or a red disk, which may not be noticed, but it is both are there. The wisdom disk, the fire disk, and the moon disk are both there. So here we're seeing the moon disk, which is the peaceful deities. The wrathful deities are on a sun disk, or on a lotus, on a red disk, or an orange colored disk. So that's something that you can remember. So now we say Om Ahong, body, speech, and mind. The Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the 3 jewels, the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Within the expanse of a seminal point located at the center of one's heart, the primordial Lord, the unchanging Buddha body of light, Samantabhadra, the Buddha body of reality, blue in color, and Samantabhadri, the expanse of reality, white in color and indivisibly united, both in the posture of meditative equipoise, seated upon a lotus, sun, and moon cushion, symbolizing the union of radiance and emptiness. So we see that illustration on the left side, that image on the left side of the page at page 18. So we can see that. And to you, the page 19, to you, the supreme ancestors of the Buddhas of past, present, and future, I bow down, make offerings, take refuge, and pray. As soon as we, the deceased, die and begin to transmigrate, at that very moment, when the pure inner radiance of reality dawns, may we, the deceased, be welcomed by the Father Samantabhadra before us. And may we, the deceased, be supported by the Mother Samantabhadri behind us. And thus encircled, may we, the deceased, be guided to the indivisible level of Samantabhadra, the 16th Buddha level, the level of unsurpassed pristine cognition. Pristine cognition would be the clear light, would be Dharmakaya. So this would happen at the moment of death. So by practicing this, recognizing this clear light that we go immediately to Samantabhadra. We do that by recognizing that we ourselves are Samantabhadra and Samantabhadri. That's how it's done. Not that we're going there, we are already there. So we practice being Samantabhadra and Samantabhadri in the union of bliss and emptiness.
What is the 16th Buddha level? I haven't heard a reference to that before.
It's the level of enlightenment. It's the level of liberation. It's the level of the Buddha, Samantabhadra and Samantabhadri.
But I mean, I'm familiar with the 10 bhumis and then
This is
Buddhahood.
This
I
is,
haven't heard 16 before.
well, I know you've heard me mention many times that we've talked about how many dimensions do we live in?
Okay, well, can you fill out what the 16th is referring to? I've never heard of anything about there being 16.
Not at this time. I'm not prepared to do that. But just be advised that there are many, many dimensions. There are many, many levels. So through your studies and through your investigations, you may have to study this. If you want to have a class where we can talk about this, we'll bring it out. But here, this is inviting you to do some study. This is daily practice. So we have to do some individual research on some of these things. Okay. It's a good question and a fair question. But so is the answer. Okay. Om Ahom. In the center channel of one's heart is Varanchana, blissful union with Datvishvari, white, radiant, holding a wheel and a bell, seated cross-legged, symbolizing the union of radiance and emptiness, amidst a mass of light, radiating the pristine cognition of reality's expanse. To you, the principal deities of the central Buddha family, I bow down, make offerings, take refuge, and pray. As soon as we, the deceased, die and begin to transmigrate, at that very moment, when the visions of the intermediate state of reality dawn, and we, the deceased, roam alone in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated delusion, may the transcendent Lord Varanchana draw us forward, leading us on a path of radiant blue light, which is the pristine cognition of reality's expanse. May the Supreme Consort, Akasa Datvishvari, support us from behind, and thus encircled, may we, the deceased, be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. So now we've entered into the Bardo of reality. In Samantabhadra, we were passing through the Bardo of death, and we can be, that clear light can come, and we can be liberated at that very moment. Not having been successful with that, now we enter into the Bardo of reality. And now the first light that we encounter is this blue light of Varanchana. Varanchana has a white body, but is emanating a blue light. Varanchana and his consort, Datvishvari, Akasa Datvishvari. So that blue light. So we see the image of Varanchana and Datvishvari on the left side of the page. So now, all the attributes, we're going to review those as we come a little bit later in this, but also in the Bardo Thodol book that we've read, many of the attributes are there and so on. So again, this is the opportunity to study these things, to understand what all the characteristics of the Buddhas are and so on. So I think we've given you, flow charts, we've given you spreadsheets, we've given you details, and now it's time to bring it all together and to make this part of our habitualization of what it is to be these deities. So now, bottom of page 20. Om Ahom. In the eastern channel branch of one's heart is Vajrasattva Ascobia, in blissful union with Buddha Lakkhana, blue and radiant, holding a Vajra and a bell, seated cross-legged, symbolizing the union of radiance and emptiness, amidst the mass of light radiating from the mirror-like pristine cognition. To the right is white Krisiti Garba, holding a seedling and a bell. To the left is white Maitreya, holding a blossoming orange bush and a bell. To the front is white Lasya, holding a mirror and a bell, and to the rear is white Pushpa, holding a flower and seated with one leg extended and the other drawn in. To you, the sixfold principle and encircling deities of the Vajra family, I bow down, make offerings, take refuge, and pray. As soon as we, the deceased, die and begin to transmigrate, at that very moment, when the visions of the intermediate state of reality dawn, and we, the deceased, roam alone in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated aversion, may the transcendent Lord Vajrasattva Ascobia draw us forward, leading us on the path of radiant white light, which is the mirror-like pristine cognition. May the supreme consort, Buddha Lakana, support us from behind, and thus encircled may we be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. So here, Vajrasattva Ascobia has a blue light. You can see the family on the left side in that image has a blue body, but is emanating a white light. The water. This is the water family. So here we are experiencing the wisdom of the mirror-like wisdom, the water. So the mirror, the water is like a mirror. We can see the moonlight and the water is often the image that is carried out. And here we're seeing the two spiritual sons and the two spiritual daughters of the two mother and father images of Ascobia and Lokana. So on the right side of the page, we see here there's Kasiti Garba on one side and Maitreya on the other side. And then in front is Lasya, which means a beautiful smile. And Pushpa means flowers as behind. So these are the two female in front of us and behind us. So we are literally surrounded by these deities who are guiding us to the white light to be able to be rescued from the fearsome passageway so that we can attain enlightenment here in the Bardo of reality. So first was Varanchana, now is Ascobia. And this is in the eastern part of the heart. So if we go back, you see in the back on page 20, the first line of this section, it says in the eastern channel branch of one's heart. So you begin to think of things in 3 dimensions, and you're thinking of your own heart, so you're thinking this is all happening within yourself. It's not happening out there. It's happening within yourself. The more that you do that, the more habituated you become with this, the more you recognize this. Okay. On page 22, Om Ah Hum, body, speech, and mind. In the southern branch channel, in the southern channel branch of one's heart is Ratnasambhava, in blissful union with Mamaki, yellow and radiant, holding a jewel and a bell, seated cross-legged, symbolizing the union of radiance and emptiness, amidst a mass of light, radiating the pristine cognition of sameness. To the right is the yellow Samantabhadra, holding a grain sheath and a bell. To the left, yellow Akasagarbha, holding a sword and a bell. And to the front is yellow Malya, and holding a garland and seated with one leg extended and the other drawn in. And to the rear is yellow Dupa, holding a incense and also seated with one leg extended and the other drawn in. To you, the sixfold principle and encircling deities of the Ratna family, I bow down, make offerings, take refuge, and pray. As soon as we, the deceased, die and begin to transmigrate, at that very moment, when the visions of the intermediate state of reality dawn, and we, the deceased, roam alone in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated pride, may the transcendent Lord Ratnasambhava draw us forward, leading us on the path of radiant yellow light, which is the pristine cognition of sameness. May the Supreme Consort, Mamaki, support us from behind, and thus encircled, may we be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfected Buddha. So here Ratnasambhava has a golden yellow body and is emanating a golden yellow light. So like a tractor beam pulling us in, and his consort Mamaki behind has our back. And then we've got the two male bodhisattvas, one on each side, and the two female, one in front and one behind, to protect us, to lead us, to encircle us with their protection. So this is in the southern portion. So the east, the southern, then the west, and then the northern part. So we begin to visualize, again, this three-dimensional heart center that we have. So next, page 23 is Om Ah Hom. In the western channel branch of one's heart is Amitabha, in blissful union with Pandara Vasini, red and radiant, holding a lotus and a bell, seated cross-legged, symbolizing the union of radiance and emptiness, amidst the mass of light, radiating the pristine cognition of discernment. To the right is red Avalokiteshvara, holding a lotus and a bell. To the left is red Manjushri, holding a sword and a bell. To the front is red Gita, holding a gong and escalated with one leg extended and the other drawn in. And to the rear is red Aloka, holding a butter lamp and also seated with one leg extended and the other drawn in. To you, the sixfold principle and encircling deities of the Padma family, I bow down, make offerings, take refuge and pray. As soon as we, the deceased, die and begin to transmigrate, at that very moment, when the visions of the intermediate state of reality dawn, and we, the deceased, roam alone in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated attachment, may the transcendent Lord Amitabha draw us forward, leading us on a path of radiant red light, which is the pristine cognition of discernment. May the Supreme Consort, Pandara Vasini, support us from behind, and thus encircled, may we be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. So this is in the West. And Amitabha is the most accessible of all these deities, all these Bardo deities, because this is the wisdom of discriminating awareness. And through the Poa practice, through the other practices that we do a lot of Amitabha practice and so on, that it's through this discriminating awareness that begins with us as ordinary beings, as human beings who say, I'm not going to watch the football game today, I'm going to do my practice. Or I'm not to go take a ride somewhere and check out all the beautiful trees and so on. I'm going to stay home and I'm going to do a practice. And this is developing discriminating awareness. What it is that I'm going to do to either entertain myself or to prepare myself for my change in my life, for being able to transform myself from being an ordinary human being into becoming a deity, becoming a bodhisattva, ultimately becoming a Buddha, to liberate ourselves. So this discriminating awareness is a very first step, is a fundamental primary step in deciding that we're going to engage in all this spirituality practice and so on. So that's why Amitabha comes first in our practices because of this. When we understand Amitabha, then it becomes easier for us to understand the other heads of the family, the other Buddhas, Ascobia and Ratnasambhava and Amagog City and Varanchana, because they are a little bit more abstract. So we have to use, what I would say is some common sense to take the path that is going to lead us to the other paths and so on. So this is what Amitabha does. This is why the Poa practice is important, and it's used for people that do not have the benefit of the Bardo Thodol. But for us now, we may not be totally understanding the Bardo Thodol, so the Poa certainly makes sense for us to understand how we get there. Then once we become habituated with the Bardo Thodol, we know the Poa just becomes a part of the transference of consciousness. It is the transference of consciousness, and we go through that Samantapadra, and maybe we are liberated at Samantapadra, but then maybe we go into the Bardo of reality, and then we go through these other deities and so on. It's not necessary that we go to these in the specific order that they're being presented here, in the East first, and then the West first, and then the South, and then the West and the North. We go into that Bardo of reality, where all these 5 lights, where all these 5 beings are there, and it's who we have an affinity for, who has been our meditation deity, who we have practiced with, and so on, that we resonate with. So that there's not specifically an order here. So, and the appearances of these Buddhas is really for us at this state of our consciousness as ordinary human beings. And these illustrations, these images are like the mnemonics. They are something that we see or something that we would hear that would immediately be able to transport us, our mind, transport us into what it is that they represent. Remember, this is all symbolic. So these are mnemonic. So we're not literally going to see these deities. In our meditation now, we can develop that, we can cultivate that, but only as a mnemonic, only as something that then springs us into the understanding, the becoming those particular deities with their qualities and so on like that. Like I said before, that we've gone through many times. You have spreadsheets about this. You should have notes about this. The book certainly has it in there in the appendices. There are spreadsheets in the book. So there's lots of places. And this is a place where, we can't do it for each other. We have to do it for ourselves.
Hey, Lance?
Yes, sir.
So is the structure meaningful in terms of the larger multi-level sort of mandala of deities that we study, that sort of stupa with the yoga deities on the top, and then this is this sort of order that we're moving in from the top center on down. Is part of this to remind us as we move from chakra to chakra and recognize the images or the symbols of the beings that reside in those spaces on that stupa, that this is us, that we are that stupa, and these beings exist in these spaces in our 3 dimensions, symbolically and mnemonically, as a way for us to reinforce the fact that they're already here, that they're already a part of us.
Exactly.
And so this practice sort of embeds that idea so that automatically we begin to realize and can lean back on our previous training around the structure, the sort of hierarchy that exists in us.
Exactly.
Ah.
Would you put up your screensaver or the picture that you use, because you use that mandala, right?
Yeah.
Can you put that up real quick? There it is. So let me see. So if you want to pin that, so you see the big image of that, but this would be the mandala.
Yeah.
So you see in the center is the white, would be Varanchana, Varanchana. And then the blue would be Ascobia, and that's in the east. And then the yellow, that would be in the south. That would be Ratnasambhava family. And then the red would be Amitabha, who we're talking about right now in this section here. And that would be the Padma family, and that's in the west. And then the green would be Amagog City, and that would be the wind. So the blue would be the water, the yellow would be the earth, the red would be the fire, and the green would be the wind, and the white would be the space. So those are the 5 elements. So you can make all these associations. You can look at that and bring all these things together by just looking at that if you've studied that and so on. And then there's a practice that we do from time to time where we visualize the stupa in front of us, the mandala in front of us, and that we go to each gate. And we visualize the blue gate, we visualize the yellow gate, the red gate, etc. And we go through each of those gates and then go into the mandala as a practice. And it's very powerful, it's very meaningful and so on. And the one thing that all those quadrants have in common with them is the white, is the center portion of Varanchana, the all-pervading wisdom, that they're all connected to that center portion there. So it tells a story. It's a book all by itself. But you're looking at the illustrations and you got to know the meaning of the illustration. So we talk about, that when we recite prayers and do things and everything, there's an outer meaning that is obvious of what it is from an outer level, what these words might simply mean or something like that, what the colors might mean. But then there's an inner meaning. And the inner meaning are the things that we learn about, that come from the doctrine, that come from the Buddha, that come from the Dharma teachings, that come from the lamas and so on. And they're the things that may not be expressed, written down, but we learn them by being the embodiment with those. And then there's the secret meaning. And the secret meaning is our relationship to that, is our experience with that. As we begin to have experience as Ascobia, we begin to have experience as Ratnasambhava, we begin to have experience as Amitabha and as Amagog City and as Varanchana and all the other deities that are involved, the bodhisattvas and so on. And for us to be able to be those Buddhas right out of the gate, so to speak, is very difficult. We have to work up to it by becoming those bodhisattvas, the 8 great bodhisattvas, and recognizing them. And through that interaction, then it's leading to the Buddhas and so on. So we can learn them, as a whole on. We're learning them together, but to really get to know them, we get to know one family at a time. One family at a time. We may start with one family, we go to another family, we go to another family, but then we go back to the first family that we started with, and then we go to the next one and so on. So it doesn't have to be in a specific order at this point. There is a progression. The progression will reveal itself. You'll recognize the progression as you engage in this. You have to recognize it. You have to see it. You have to experience it. So So this book, the wonderful thing about this book is it gives us all the information. Now we have to have that secret experience. Now the book provides us all the inner meaning. Now we have to have the secret meaning.
I find it, but personally, a little inspiring and momentarily awakening each time I consider the idea that looking at this mantra is sort of looking at a map of my own Buddha nature, and that I'm looking from the top down, and that below this layer, that is this flat layer that I'm looking at, are the other layers of this sort of majestic stupa, and just that idea that this is a multi-dimensional map of our resources, of our inner resources, lifts me up for a moment, and so I enjoy that. I enjoy the imagery a lot.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I mean, here is the stupa. This is one of the stupas. So if you were looking at that image straight on, it would look like this. But then when you look at it in 3 dimensions, now it looks like this. So there's 8 great stupas. So, excuse me, if you all are interested, when we finish, the Bardo Thodol, there's a lot of other things we could talk about that are related, so we could talk about the 8 great stupas. And so there's many things that we can talk about. So, okay. All right, thank you for bringing up the question.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're on the bottom of page 14, or 24, excuse me. Om Ah Hom. In the northern channel branch of one's heart is Amagoga City. In blissful union with Samaya Tara, green and radiant. Samaya Tara supports us from behind. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. In blissful union with Samaya Tara, green and radiant, holding a cross vajra and a bell, seated cross-legged, symbolizing the union of radiance and emptiness, amidst the mass of light, radiating the pristine cognition of accomplishment. To the right is green Sarvanavarana Vishkabin, holding a book and a bell. To the left is green Vajrapani, holding a vajra and a bell. And to the front is green Ganda, holding a conch and seated with one leg extended and the other drawn in. And to the rear is green Narti, holding a food offering and also seated with one leg extended and the other drawn in. To you, the 6-fold principle encircling deities of the karma family, I bow down, make offerings, take refuge and pray. As soon as we the deceased die and begin to transmigrate, in that very moment, when the visions of the intermediate state of reality dawn, and we the deceased roam alone in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated envy, may the transcendent Lord Amagog City draw us forward, leading us on the path of radiant green light, which is the pristine cognition of accomplishment. May the Supreme Consort, Samaya Tara, support us from behind, and thus, encircled, may we be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. So here is the wind family, the karma family, the element of wind. One of the things that is important is learning how to pronounce these names. And within the names is meaning. And if we learn to break down the syllables of the Sanskrit names, it really helps us to understand who these are. So we without going to language lessons, we do get a lesson on the meaning of different words in the Sanskrit language. And it's very helpful, and it opens up many other things that we do. We see many other references and so on that are Sanskrit references, and helps us to put this together. So part of the practice is being able to familiarize ourselves with these names and be able to pronounce them as best we can, at least to get the syllables right, to get, so Sarvanarana Vishkabin is definitely the most difficult, but it just brings out the point that it reveals who it is. Sarva, the word sarva, the first part, means all. So all Sarva Navarana Vishkabin. So Navarana refers to the liberation stages, like nirvana, the different pathways of how to accomplish this. So the other two words, Vishkabin, I don't remember, so I'm not going to make anything up. But those two, but all the different pathways, and then we can elaborate if we look it up what Vishkabin would mean. So these are all helpful things. And if you've got a curious mind and you got the time, you make the time to do these things and everything, it's very rewarding. And as we get older, just a little note from our geriologist, if that's what they call it, the doctor who takes care of old people, to keep your mind activated. We can do puzzles, but this is kind of like a puzzle, isn't it? And it really, and it excites ourselves and has great meaning to ourselves. So we could do a puzzle of the Golden Gate Bridge and the San Francisco skyline. I'm sure it's beautiful. And it's a wonderful thing to do for a month or so in your den at your house or something. But you could also do something like this, that this 2,000-piece jigsaw puzzle without a picture, and put the Buddhism together, to put this together. So it's very healthy. So
I love that, Lance. We could also do mandala and deity coloring books. I've got a few of those.
There are indeed. That's right. Thank
Yeah.
you very much. Yes, that's right. Yes, there's a lot of things out there that help us to connect the images with the symbology, with the inner meanings, and so on. So we just have to avail ourselves of them.
Or a puzzle with of a mandala. That would be really cool.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Lance,
Yeah. Yes.
I actually wanted to ask you more about Nivarana Vishkambin, because that Bodhisattva shows up in the White Sur practice. And in that practice, he's like somebody who's helping the Bardo beings, and here we are studying the Bardo. Like, it's very interesting. And
Yes.
I do want to, I'm going to look it up. I'm trying to figure it out. And also,
Well, I think his element or his implement is incense.
huh.
Um,
Oh, that's interesting.
Wait a minute, I gotta prove that. Wait a minute. 24, 26.
Michael posted what looks
Oh
like.
no,
an
holding a
link.
book and a bell. Holding a book and a bell. I'm sorry. Okay. No, never mind. I got it mixed up with something else.
Okay, the other kind of connection that I can't put my finger on is this Amrit Kundalini, or
Yeah, Kundalini.
I was in an empowerment. I should look it up just
Are
recently.
you talking about the Hindu practice, Kundalini?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, say it again then, please.
I was in an empowerment. I think Garchi Rinpoche was giving an empowerment, and just recently, and the deity image was someone I didn't really know, and I was asking in the chat, and somebody said, it's Amrita Kundali. And it's one of these things I just don't know enough. I should know more about than I do. So, and then here he shows up again. So these are two in particular I want to look into.
Okay.
The image was this Bodhisattva, but the empowerment was something else. Like, it wasn't an empowerment from Amrita Kundali,
Amrita Kundalin. Amrita Kundalin, I think. Could it have been that?
Yeah, it could have been, but it
Amrita
wasn't the
Kundala.
empowerment for that. It was the deity was the image on the vase they were using for some reason, you know?
Right.
So I
But-
don't know the connections and I need to research it.
Well, that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
And they're part of these, this holistic, families that come together and so on. And sometimes they kind of cross with each other, in different practices and so on. So getting familiar with all that. And what it all points to is that it's all the same. Fundamentally, that's one of the things that we learn in the very beginning, that if you learn one Buddha, you learn them all, because you're learning a bodhicitta. And bodhicitta is what all these deities have in common, is this holy mind, a holy enlightened mind. So the way in which they are actualizing that holy enlightened mind are the differences of these different deities, but they all work together. And sometimes this one works with that one, sometimes it works with another one, and so on like that. So you begin to recognize that and see all that, and see that it's all within yourself. And it helps us to understand the 84,000 emotions. How can we have 84,000 emotions? Well, there's so many different people with so different many, various things that are happening and so on. But there are, all this comes together to be able to answer all that, to be able to liberate all of that. I remember years ago, thinking, when I first came into Buddhism, and I would see the mandalas. And before that, I was into many, many, many years ago, I used to do astrology. And astrology, it starts off with this wheel and everything, and it's got the houses and the decants and everything. And it was this web, And then here we are in Buddhism, and now here are these mandalas that are designed in much the same way. And it's very interesting to see how all these things come together. And then the Kala Chakra, which is the scientific, mystical part of Buddhism, and the Kala Chakra, they have astrology, and they have all these, medical sciences. They have all the science stuff is in the Kala Chakra. So it's very interesting. Okay. Anybody have any other comments or questions? Is this making some sense? And am I wrong by saying that you got to dig in this yourself?
And Lance, you probably didn't notice because it's in chat, but Michael posted a very helpful link at hinduscriptures.com with a description of Sarva Nivarana Vishkabim.
Oh,
And,
okay, great.
and maybe, Sandra, that's the site where you could find the answer to your other question.
Okay. Yeah, Google has gotten quite good at being able to find bona fide references of these things, so you go 2 or 3. Yes, go ahead.
Could I ask you if you have a favorite recording of the Bardo Thodol to listen to? Is there one that you like in particular?
What do you mean, of the recitation of it?
Yes, like, there are people who have readings and they're on YouTube.
No, I read it myself.
Any out?
I read it myself.
Well, I just want you to know, like, I was listening to one as I was working around, and it showed me that our practice group together has really made a difference. Like, all these things were familiar, and the translation was a little bit different. And so I heard in my head the things we had said, and then they said something slightly different. Like, they don't say Rikyabu, they say like noble, like I was hearing Rikyabu. And so I was realizing how much it's imprinted on my brain just going through it one time with you. It's amazing, amazing.
Yeah. Child of Buddha nature. Child of Buddha nature means Rikyabu. That's where it comes from.
I think Burl Ives did a Christmas recording of the Bardo.
I thought it was Peter, Paul, and Mary. Did they do it too? Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad we're making connections with this. And again, the only way to do it is to dive in and start studying. And I always remind myself, what do I have to do that's better than this?
Are these 5 groups of 6 part of the 36?
Yes. Yep. Okay, so yes, they are part of the 36. So they are the 36, do not include the Vidyadhara. We'll get to the Vidyadhara, but that would be, they're at the throat chakra. And so that if they were included, then it would be the 46. Okay, so now
Lance, could I mention one other thing? Probably everyone has noticed this, but just in case, the indented sections that we've been reading here, as soon as we, the deceased, die and begin to transmigrate, those all appear to come from the Aspirational Prayer, which rescues from the dangerous pathways of the intermediate state. So that's just a nice crossover as well. And that's something we've been reciting at the end, of course.
Correct. So that puts it all together, yes. So, in a practice session, for instance, if you were doing this as a daily practice, you may just do, the Ratnasambhava family and just, contemplate that. And, and to me, a session like that doesn't necessarily mean that you're sitting here with your eyes closed or your eyes open and you're just fixated on looking at something. It can mean that you've got books out and you're spending time, studying and so on like that. That's a practice. So don't think that it has to be sitting there, motionless and not doing anything. In the flight of the Garuda, meditation is a very active thing. Our meditation is not passive. It is a very active process. The mind is always going. And so we can't stop the mind as much as we might like to, and we may have periods where we can, but the point is to give the mind something really good, wholesome to focus on. And then you can develop that one-pointed mindfulness instead of just sitting there and letting your mind wander and jump all around like the proverbial monkey, jumping around from one thought to another. So again, it comes back to Amitabha, the wisdom of discriminating awareness. What are we going to pay attention to? If we're 50 years old now, for 50 years, we've been paying attention to our physical body and our intellectual body. Now we're starting to pay attention to our spiritual body. Okay, so page 26, now we come to this next section that says Om Ahum, body, speech, and mind. In the channel branch of the eastern gate of one's heart are white Trilokya, Vijaya, and Ankusha in blissful union and dancing. In the channel branch of the southern gate of one's heart are yellow Yamantaka and Pasa in blissful union and dancing. In the channel branch of the western gate of one's heart are red Hayagriva and Spota in blissful union and dancing. In the channel branch of the northern gate of one's heart are green Amrita Kundalin and Ganta in blissful union and dancing. To you, the 8 emanation gatekeepers, male and female, I bow down, take offerings, take refuge and pray. As soon as we, the deceased, die and begin to transmigrate, at that very moment, when the visions of the intermediate state of reality dawn, and we, the deceased, roam alone in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated habitual tendencies, may the 4 Mahakaroda male gatekeepers draw us forward, leading us on the path of radiant rainbow light, which is the four pristine cognitions combined. May the supreme consorts, the four female gatekeepers, support us from behind, and thus encircled, may we be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfected Buddha. So now these are the gatekeepers. So if you remember the mandalas that we've used, and we had the peaceful mandala, and it had the different color sections, the four quadrants. And I remember it had the boxes, it had the gatekeepers in there. And I sent you all have, the meanings of all those. And, you can drag that out and see all this stuff. So the gatekeepers, depending on which direction we're coming from, have a function. If we're coming from the top down, we've died, and now we become the spiritual being, and now we're coming down, and we come through Samantabhadra, the clear light. If we don't achieve liberation, then we go into the heart center, and we go to the Bardo reality. We have these 5 Buddha families and so on, and then there is a gatekeeper that will close to keep us into the Bardo of reality. And the gatekeepers represent different characteristics. They represent the four thoughts. I should have had this out. So the 4 gatekeepers, the emanation gatekeepers, represent the enlightened activities, the 4 enlightened activities, the enlightened activity of pacification, of enrichment, of magnetizing, and of subjugation. And they also represent the purity of the 4 ways of birth: the womb birth, the egg birth, the moisture birth, heat and moisture birth, and miraculous birth. And they also represent the 4 immeasurables, the purification of the 4 immeasurables. So these are there, those gates are closed to help us to say, okay, you haven't achieved liberation, but you're trying to get out, you're trying to find a body. So here's this gate is closed, and we're going to help you by remembering what these deities represent, what these gatekeepers represent. And it may spark you to remember and then to want to come back in and be the light of that particular deity that's going to rescue you from the Bardo, from further transmigration to the lower levels. So it's there. If you can't do that, then the gate opens up and you go to the next level. You would go into the wrathful deities and so on. So I said that's from the top down. Now there's an interesting thing here. Are y'all familiar with Carl Jung? Carl Jung, the great psychoanalyst and so on, and he was a contemporary of Freud. Actually, he was a student of Freud, who then took things off into another direction, into a spiritual direction. And he became, I don't know if he was a follower, I don't know what level of practitioner he was or anything like this, but he incorporated many of the Buddhist teachings into his philosophy of psychology and so on. And he talked about that this Bardo Thodol we're experiencing when we die from the top down. But as ordinary beings, we should approach it from the bottom up. So to read this whole Bardo Thodol backwards, to start off from the very beginning, from the very base of the mandala, and then work your way up to the Buddha level is very powerful. And I would recommend it to you, at some point when you get more and more familiar with this. And you'll see that that's what we've been doing. We've been coming at it from the bottom up. Those of us who have had some kind of experience, have had some kind of deep meditation, samadhi or something like that, may have realized that already. They may have realized, the Bardo Thodol. Remember, we've all been there before. We've all been there before. Where were we before we were born? Where were we when we die? It's the same place. And so it's a matter of getting to a level of awareness that is so subtle that we can remember those things in our heart center. So it's very abstract. It's very subtle. But as we experience it, we begin to make the whole on begins to make the connections. You begin to recognize these interconnections, the spirituality of all this. So coming up from the bottom, as Carl Jung suggested, as we come to the gatekeeper, now the gatekeeper is there to say, how pure are you? Do you know what the four vast, excuse me, what is bodhicitta? What are the four vast qualities of bodhicitta? What are the four modes of birth? What are the enlightened activities? And then if we really know those things, then the gates open up for you to enter into the Bardo of reality, to where these Buddhas are, to where the peaceful Buddhas are. So in one way, it's protecting yourself from getting out. And another way, it's letting you in. So it's an interesting thing, the gatekeepers. What are the function of the gatekeepers? Why are they there? So, and they can be our testors, the testers who are showing our commitment.
Bardo Jeopardy.
What's that?
Bardo Jeopardy.
Maybe the match game, anyway. Yeah. Okay, so they are in a dancing posture. They are on sun discs. So the peaceful deities were on moon discs, and we're sitting on moon discs. They represent compassion. And then the gatekeepers are on sun discs. They're standing in dancing position. So the sun disc is wisdom, the wisdom fire. And they're dancing because things are are moving around a lot. And you got to be able to dance in that. You got to be creative in that. You got to be confident in that. A dancer, you may have a choreography that you're following in a particular dance, and you move this way, you move that way, your partner moves with you, opposite, and you're moving together and everything. But sometimes you lose balance, and your foot goes out, your leg goes out in a way, and you say, oh, that's a new dance step. I can incorporate that into my choreography. And now I have a new dance. So it's kind of like, so the dancing is kind of like that, is being able to dance with the vicissitudes of life. The vicissitudes means the changes of life, to be able to dance with that. It's not all rigid and static. It flows, it changes all the time. And we have to learn as human beings, that's our gift as human beings, is to be able to be the dancer, to be able to move with those changes. And we don't marginalize them. We don't say, oh, I'm not going to do that. Oh, I just lost my balance. I'm going to say that was a mistake. I'm not going to do that. We bring it onto the path. It becomes part of our choreography. That's the creative urge. So you can see how this is tying together into our everyday lives, because we're going through these vicissitudes all the time. Our lives are changing. And we're going to bring all this onto the path. You know, we don't become spiritual and put walls up around ourselves. To become spiritual, you're removing all the walls. So, so going back to the Bardo Thodol book that we had studied, you know, there's all kinds of references, and then the book by Gourmet Dorje are in the appendices, like I said, are reference points. You know, you can look these up. There's an excellent glossary that is in that book and in other books that you can look these names up and so on. There's indexes in the books, and you can look them up and cross, you know, look at different books and see what they have to say about different aspects and so on. And sometimes the books, you know, one book may be talking about, you know, Buddhism, Dharma at this level, but then another book's talking about Buddhism at this level, but they got words that are the same, but at different levels, they have slightly different nuance to them and so on. So getting familiar with that. And that's why sometimes we would say, well, according to this particular teaching, according to this particular practice, Amitabha represents this, but to this one, it represents something a little bit different. You know, it's a little more spacious maybe. Okay. So these are the gatekeepers. Any questions? Everybody good?
Can I ask a kind of a weird question?
Sure.
You're going over this with all of the schoolboys and girls in this class here that we're all Buddhist, coming up Buddhist. Do you think that this same situation happens to Catholics and Jews, and that or is there some other?
What do you mean? You mean when they go into the Bardo and experience these spiritual things?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they have different names for it. They have different names for it. You know, there's a mystical side of Catholicism. There's a mystical side of Judaism. There's, you know, mystical sides of Hinduism and so on. So they have different names for all this. This isn't exclusively a Buddhist thing. You know?
I see what you're talking about. It's like having a car and you go from one country to another country, and instead of calling this a carburetor, they call it an air handler or something like that.
Yeah, an air fuel mixer or something like that. Yeah. Okay. But we're human beings. We all are going through the same. We all have that same experience in front of us, or we're doing it. We're, you know, but it's different cultures have different names for it. Mm-hmm. You know, what the Vatican is sitting on, you know, this is one of the stories I've always, you know, been familiar with, that the Vatican is sitting on great secrets, that if they would release those secrets, what a revelation it would be to so many millions of people. But they continue to sit on it. You know, in Buddhism, it's an open book. You know, it's there. All you got to do is ask the question if it's not presented to you, you know, but basically in the old country, you just got to ask the question.
And climb 5 mountain ranges.
What was that?
Climb 5 mountain ranges, showing your sincerity.
Maybe so. Well, it's part of, you know, going from the bottom up. Michael, you had your hand up. Did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah. I suspect that the references that we're reading to channels where there are different expanses of light and other sorts of light phenomena I suspect that these are supposed to sort of correspond to the channels that we hear about in the tantric concepts of the subtle body channels, as in Tibetan medicine.
Well, there is, when you start talking about that, you're talking about the impure body and the pure body. The impure body would be our body as ordinary beings that are trying to purify to get to the pure body realizations of what these deities represent. So we kind of have to be clear with that. So as a functionality, as you just talked about, like with the medical, that would be dealing with the impure body, you know, whether it's it's all psychophysical. So it would have to be both simultaneously. But the goal is to purify to be able to get to the pure body. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So in the narrative and the imagery, it's meant to perhaps guide us to the idea of the subtle body, but also might speak to us at the level of the physical body when it talks about these actually being located physically in certain places on our body at certain chakras. I guess it could be both. And it might be suggesting that we want to be moving our conceptualization towards the more subtle body in order to understand what's going on that's outside of our dying body.
Well, right. And then 4 yogas of Naropa go in, or the 6 yogas of Naropa go into that.
Thank you.
When it goes into the channels, winds and drops. And so when it gets deeper into that, you know, and so, yeah. Okay. So then we go to the next page, 28. Om Ah Hum. Amidst an expanse of light in the channel branch of the energy center of great bliss at one's crown, within a radiant and vibrant mandala, that is illustrious white seminal point, stands Chakra, sage of the God realms, white in color and playing a lute. May he obstruct pride, which is the entrance to rebirth in the God realms. Excuse me. Amidst an expanse of light in one's occipital channels, adjacent to the throat center, which resembles the horn of an ox, within a radiant and vibrant mandala, that is illustrious green seminal point, stands Vemasitra, sage of the anti-gods, green in color, bearing armor and a weapon. May he obstruct envy, which is the entrance to rebirth in the anti-god realm. Amidst an expanse of light in one's life force channel, adjacent to the heart center, which resembles a crystal tube, within a radiant and vibrant mandala, that is illustrious yellow seminal point, stands Shakyamuni, sage of the human beings, yellow in color and carrying a mendicant staff. May he obstruct attachment, which is the entrance to rebirth in the human realms. Page 29. Amidst an expanse of light in the energy center of one's navel, within a radiant and vibrant mandala, there is illustrious blue seminal point, stands Stur Simha, sage of animals, blue in color and carrying a book. May he obstruct illusion, which is the entrance to rebirth in the animal realms. Amidst an expanse of light in the channel branch at one's bliss-sustaining secret place, the genitals, within a radiant and vibrant mandala, that is illustrious red seminal point, stands Zvalamukha, sage of the anguished spirits, red in color, carrying a wish-granting casket. may he obstruct miserliness, which is the entrance to rebirth among the anguished spirit realms. Amidst an expanse of light in the energy center of the soles of one's feet, within a radiant and vibrant mandala that is illustrious black, seminal point stands Yama Dhamaraja, sage of the hell beings, black in color and carrying a flame and water. May he obstruct aversion, which is the entrance to rebirth among the hell realms. To you, the 6 sages, the Buddha bodies of emanation, who act for the benefit of living beings, I bow down, make offerings, take refuge and pray. As soon as we, the deceased, die and begin to transmigrate, at that very moment, when the visions of the intermediate state of rebirth dawn, and we, the deceased, roam alone in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated habitual tendencies, may the 3 sages of the higher realms dawn before us, leading us on the path of radiant rainbow light, which is the 4 pristine cognitions combined. May the 3 sages of the lower realms support us from behind, and thus encircled, may we be rescued from the light paths of the 6 impure states of existence and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. So here, these are the 6 sages. So we talked about them, quite a while ago in the Bardo Thodol. And these are the 6 Buddhas that are in the 6 human realms there to be able to offer a moment of peace for each of the inhabitants of those particular realms so that they can recognize the cause of their suffering and that they can recognize that there is a liberation that is possible within themselves, that the Buddhas are pointing the way to, that the Buddhas are representative of to those in those realms. So this is what this represents here. So we're visualizing this. It says in the crown. So it's in the crown of the head. It's in the occipital. The occipital would be the cranial up here, and then the heart center. Oh no, excuse me. The occipital is in the throat. Forgive me. Would be in the throat here, and the crown, the occipital, and the heart. So we get to know these sages, and they are the emanations of the Dharmakaya. They are the emanations of the true body, of the truth body. So again, in our support text, our support information, there's more detail about this, and to be able to look this up and to recognize these beings as beings who we may have encountered in our own life. We may have recognized them within our own self, or that we may have remembrances of them. And that's been something I've been trying to remember to say about remembering, because I've said that, we've died many times, we've been born many times, and we don't have a memory, the human memory of those events and so on. But when we go into the samadhi, when we go into this deep meditation and so on, we have remembrances there that are not as how would you say, as clear as we might experience this. It's heartfelt. It's in our heart mind. Here is human mind. So here we've got all the problems of human mind, and everything's like a dream to us. What we did, at 5 o'clock this evening is like a dream to us now compared to what we're experiencing right now. Imagine what it was last week, or imagine what it was a lifetime before. It's all just like a dream, but when we experience at the heart level, then it becomes transformative. And that's what we're preparing ourselves for. It can come as a shock sometimes, in the beginning maybe, but then we begin to become familiar with it and we have confidence in it. And we begin to see, oh, that is my spirituality. That is what I am connected to. And the my falls away. The I, me, mine goes away. Time goes away. Place goes away. It all becomes omnipresent. It all becomes Dharmakaya. We've been there many times. And then now we can bring that back because we're experiencing that as a samadhi, as a meditation. And then we're bringing it back now into, this ordinary mind. But now this ordinary mind has now shifted and now has its bottom level has become up here instead of its bottom level down here. Now it's become up here. So here it was just talking about the chakras. So imagine the chakra at the genital level is way different than the chakra that's at the heart level, isn't it? What does the genital level respond to? Very gross things. What does the heart level respond to? Very subtle things. So we begin to recognize these levels within our body. So this goes to what Michael was bringing up, and understanding the impure subtle body and the pure subtle body. So these Buddhas, these sages here, are leading us in that direction. Any questions or comment about that? So I think we're going to leave our discussion here for tonight, and we can continue a little bit more of a open discussion if you like. And I want to get to the point where we do our closing prayers and do the prayer for the rescue in the from the fear of the Bardo. How do we call it? The aspirational prayer that protects from fear. So what we've been reciting, these prayers, as Debbie just pointed out, these are the aspirational prayers that rescue from the dangerous pathways. These prayers that are embedded in this in these sections here that are in the italics are those prayers. So what do you think of this? We had a couple of weeks off, and are we getting back into the groove?
It's interesting. You mentioned, Lance, the Flight of the Garuda teachings and how they show us how active meditation really is. And I've been trying to bring that more into my meditation, and when meditating on these different deities, to not just visualize in the narrow sense of visualize, but try to really bring in the auditory sense and hear them and what's happening around them. Some of the descriptions of Sukhavati, for example, the aspiration to Sukhavati is just wonderful about what Sukhavati sounds like, not just what it looks like and what it feels like. And so bringing those kinesthetic senses in and imagining Amitabha moving and leaning forward and looking at me and other beings and smiling and turning his head and just trying to make sure that I'm not turning my meditation into a statue. That instead, if anything, if I'm using a statue as an inspiration, to then be thinking of not bringing it alive, but realizing that it is alive, and as well as alive in me. So that's just something I've been working with that's been interesting, because I normally, I'm primary auditory and secondary kinesthetic. And I don't visualize well in the literal visual sense. But if I start with those and they then become the doorway that opens up the third one for me. And I can only imagine it works similarly just from other directions from other people, someone who's got visual as their primary sense. And they can use that as the doorway into the auditory and kinesthetic part of it. So anyway, just a thought.
No, that's very good. Thank you. And I think, a major point and is the deity yoga, is getting into the deity yoga practices, and so the qualities that you were talking about, I can't pronounce what you just said, the kinesthetic. Yes, those things, we begin to experience those through the deity yoga. By practicing it, by visualizing our body as the body of the particular deity and so on, and what it takes to get there and what they're holding and so on, and their mantra, the mantra that we recite with each of those deity yoga practices is that deity announcing who they are or what they represent. So we're getting to know that, and we're doing it with our body, with our wind, our lungs, our vocal cords. We're vibrating with that deity, and then we're thinking about maybe what that means, but then that thinking of what it means and the actual doing it with our body just come into one. And we're no longer thinking about it. We're no longer conscious of our breathing and doing it. And as I've said many times, it's like a lock that opens up our heart center, opens up the Dharmakaya, and then we recognize, oh, my goodness, now I'm Amitabha. Now I'm Shenrezig, whatever. It's very powerful. And maybe it just lasts for that quick, but that quick in some lives is an eternity, seems like an eternity. To these great beings, our lives is like that. So it's all relative. When we then be able to see, then we'd be able to experience the relative, see the relative in the point of view of the absolute.
Kempo Samdup said last weekend, we can all be 1 minute Buddhas.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. 1 minute turns into 2 minutes, et cetera, et cetera. We're stabilizing that. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. So let's recite, let me see, it's on page 214. So would someone like to volunteer to read this, or shall I call on somebody? Somebody that hasn't read tonight or recited tonight. Okay. Jerry and Jane, would you like to recite in unison page 214 through the end? Are you being modest tonight?
Did you say 214?
Yeah, 214 to 218.
I can do that.
All right, is that okay, Jane and Jerry? Okay. All right, Gary. So everybody can read along, can recite along. Mute your microphones if you recite, please.
Just a moment, please. Okay. Aspirational prayer, which protects from fear of the intermediate states. when my life's course is ended and I roam alone in the intermediate states, the loved ones of this world can no longer help me. So at this critical time, may the conquerors, the peaceful and wrathful deities, quickly release the power of their compassion, and may the deep darkness of my ignorance be dispelled. When I roam alone, separated by from my loved ones, and myriad images of emptiness arise, naturally manifesting, may the Buddhas quickly release the power of their compassion, and may the fear of the awesome and terrifying intermediate state be annulled. May the 5 radiant lights of pristine cognition dawn. May I recognize them as my own nature, and without awe and without terror, and as the manifold forms of the peaceful and wrathful deities arise, may I be fearlessly confident. May I be fearlessly confident and recognize that the characteristics of the intermediate state states. I can't read my own writing. May the elements I'm sorry, I'm going backwards in my book.
Page 215, Gary.
Yeah, I know it's 215. My pages were out of order. When I experience suffering as the result of negative past actions, may the great compassionate one dispel all such misery. And as the natural sound of reality reverberates like 1,000 peals of thunder, may all sounds be heard as the teachings of the greater vehicle. When I am driven on by past actions, unable to find a refuge, may the meditational deities dispel all such misery. And as I experience the suffering of habitual tendencies and past action, may the meditative stabilities of inner radiance and bliss naturally arise. When I am miraculously born into the intermediate state of rebirth, may I not be beguiled by the perverse prophecies of Mara. And as I freely arrive at every place that I think of, may the bewildering fear and terror generated by my negative past actions not arise. When the roars of savage wild beasts echo around me, may their cries be transformed into the sound of sacred teachings. 6 syllables, Om Mani Padme Hum. And as I am engulfed by snow, rain, wind, and darkness, may I achieve the pure clairvoyance of radiant, pristine cognition. May sentient beings in the intermediate state, similar in kind to myself, be born into the higher realms, free from rivalry, and as severe dissonant mental states generate insatiable hunger and thirst. May the afflictions of hunger, thirst, heat, and cold be annulled. When I see my future parents in union, may I perceive them as Mahakaranika and consort, and for the sake of others, being blessed with the power to choose a birthplace, may I achieve an exalted body adorned with the auspicious major and minor marks. Once I have achieved birth in a supreme human form, may I act so as to swiftly liberate all who see and hear me. And may I not be influenced by my negative past actions, but multiply and emulate my past merits. Wherever I may be born, in whatever land it may be, may I quickly encounter the meditational deity of my past lives, knowing from immediately after birth how to speak and walk. May I remember my past lives and attain the power of non-forgetfulness. May I easily come to master, by study and reflection, the manifold stages of learning small, intermediate, and great May the country into which I am born be auspicious, and may all sentient beings be blessed with happiness. O peaceful and wrathful conquerors, may I and all others become entirely at one with you and come to resemble you in all your forms, your retinues, your lifespan, and your Buddha fields, and in every quality of your supreme auspicious marks. Through the compassion of Samattabhadra and the infinite, peaceful, and wrathful deities, by the power of the truth of pure reality, and by the blessing of the mantrins who practice one-pointedly, may every wish of this aspirational prayer be fulfilled. Samaya, composed by the preceptor from Odhyana Padmakara, may this profound sacred teaching not be extinguished until all the worlds of all cyclic existence have been emptied. This is a treasure text of Tulku Karma Lingpa.
Very good. Thank you very much. Debbie, can we do the Shakyamuni prayer, please? Sukhavati. Oh, excuse me 1 second. John has had your hand up. John, was there something that you wanted to bring up? John?
No, I guess it's by accident or some quirk of the system. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. All right, please, Debbie, then continue.
Emaho. In the center is the marvelous Buddha Amitabha of boundless light. On the right side is Avalokiteshvara, the Lord of great compassion. On the left is Vajrapani, the Lord of powerful means. All are surrounded by limitless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Immeasurable peace and happiness is the blissful pure land of Dewachen. When I and all beings pass from samsara, may we be born in Dewachen without taking samsaric rebirth. May I have the blessing of meeting Amitabha face to face. By the power and blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, may I attain this aspiration without hindrance. Tayata pensa driya awa bodhanaya soha. Tayata pensa driya awa bodhanaya soha. Tayata pensa driya awa bodhanaya soha. Translated as, this is it. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 5 families and 3 times who have destroyed defilement lead to enlightenment. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. By this virtue, may I achieve all knowingness by defeating all enemies' confusion. May all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of suffering. As Manjushri the warrior realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings.
Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Shri Om Mani Padme Hum Shri Om Mani Padme Hum 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 Shri Om Ah Hum Om Ah Hum Om Ah Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all beings. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Sangha.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance.
Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Lance.
Debbie, hang in
Thank
for a
you.
minute. They'll
Sure.
make-